when humanity refused to surrender. The galaxy's most feared empire brought an armada of 2,000 warships to make an example of Earth, but the Galactic Council could only watch in horror as they realized they hadn't been watching a primitive species. They'd been watching apex predators pretending to be prey. The crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council thrummed with an energy that bordered on panic. Ambassador Zixthor of the Centauri Collective tapped his 6 manipulator appendages against the obsidian table, the rhythmic clicking echoing through the cavernous space like a countdown to catastrophe. "This is unprecedented," declared High Counselor Miriseth, her translucent form flickering with distress. The ancient ethereal had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across 3 galactic epochs, yet nothing in her vast experience had prepared her for this moment. The Vraxian hegemony has never been defeated, not once in their 10,000-year expansion across the Perseus Arm. Around the circular table, representatives from 47 member species sat in stunned silence. Holographic displays flickered above each seat, showing the same impossible data streams. The Vraxians, the most feared military force in known space, had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had attacked Earth. "The question before us," Mirazeth continued, her voice carrying the weight of eons, "is not whether we should intervene. It is whether intervention is even possible at this stage." Ambassador Krevan of the Phosphor Collective rose, his bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation. "High Counselor, with respect, the humans submitted their application for council membership only 6 cycles ago. They are a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. Their fastest vessels require weeks to cross their own solar system. They have no shield technology, no plasma weaponry, no dimensional drives. The Vraxians will annihilate them within standard hours." "That was our assessment as well," Zixthor interjected, his voice carrying an edge of something the council rarely heard from the normally composed Centauri: fear. "It was everyone's assessment, which is precisely why we denied their membership application. We believed they needed at least another century of development before they could contribute meaningfully to galactic affairs." He gestured toward the central holographic display, which expanded to fill the chamber with tactical data. "But consider what has transpired in the past 37 hours since the Vraxian attack fleet emerged from slip space at the edge of the Sol system." The display showed the initial Vraxian formation, 300 warships, including 5 dreadnoughts, each larger than some of Earth's cities. It was a force capable of reducing a planet to molten slag or, if the Vraxians felt merciful, conquering it within a matter of days. The Vraxians transmitted their standard ultimatum. Zixthor continued: "Immediate surrender, followed by integration into the hegemony as a vassal species. Refusal would result in the systematic destruction of all population centers, followed by orbital bombardment." "And the humans refused," whispered Ambassador Thalnara of the Silicon Concordat, her crystalline voice carrying notes of disbelief. "They did more than refuse," Zixthor replied. "They laughed. Then they told the Vraxians, and I quote from the transmission, 'Come and take it.'" A murmur rippled through the council chamber. Such defiance was suicide. The Vraxians did not tolerate insubordination. Their response to resistance was always the same: overwhelming, brutal, and absolute. "The attack commenced 17 hours ago," Zixthor said, manipulating the holographic display. The image shifted, showing the Vraxian fleet accelerating toward the inner planets of the Sol system. The humans had positioned what appeared to be a pitifully small defensive force, approximately 200 vessels of various classes, most of them converted mining ships and freight haulers. The largest was barely a tenth the mass of a Vraxian destroyer. Counselor Vexnar, a hulking Chromagian whose species prided themselves on military prowess, leaned forward. "Then how, watch," Zixthor interrupted, his appendages moving rapidly across the control interface. The hologram came alive with the violence of space combat. The Vraxian fleet spread into attack formation, their crimson hulls gleaming with the reflected light of Sol. Their plasma batteries began charging, visible as growing spheres of deadly orange energy along their flanks. Then the humans struck. The human vessels didn't maneuver like ships. They moved like a swarm of insects, chaotic yet coordinated, unpredictable yet purposeful. While Vraxian warships relied on powerful shields and heavy armor to withstand enemy fire, the human ships simply refused to be where the weapons were aimed. Observe their acceleration curves. Zixthor highlighted the data streams flowing beneath the combat footage. These vessels are pulling maneuvers that should liquefy their crews. 15, 20, even 30 gravities of sustained acceleration, lateral thrust that would tear conventional ships apart. The Vrexians assumed, as we all did, that humans would be limited by the same biological constraints as other carbon-based life forms. They should be, Mirazeth said quietly. Those acceleration forces should kill them. They almost do, Zixthor replied. Our intelligence analysts finally accessed some of their military databases. The humans have developed something they call gel pods, acceleration couches, filled with oxygenated fluid that supports their bodies during extreme maneuvers. Their pilots are essentially drowning in breathable liquid, while their ships perform impossible evasion patterns. On the display, a cluster of human fighters, small craft that the Vrexians had initially dismissed as insignificant, swarmed around a Vrexian destroyer. The destroyer's point defense systems blazed with anti-fighter fire, creating a web of deadly energy that should have obliterated the attackers. Instead, the human fighters danced through the barrage like leaves in a hurricane, impossibly dodging streams of weapons fire that traveled at appreciable fractions of light speed. Their own weapons, primitive chemical rockets and magnetic accelerators, seemed laughably inadequate against Vrexian armor. Until they started hitting. Kinetic weapons, Ambassador Krevan scoffed. Missiles with chemical propellant. Magnetic railguns. Technology we abandoned millennia ago. Technology you abandoned because you developed more efficient alternatives, Zixthor corrected. But consider the human approach. They don't need their weapons to be sophisticated. They need them to be numerous, cheap, and fast. The human missiles didn't individually possess enough power to penetrate Vrexian shields, but the humans didn't fire missiles individually. They fired them in waves of hundreds, thousands, overwhelming the destroyer's point defense through sheer saturation. When the shields finally collapsed under the relentless barrage, the railgun rounds followed depleted uranium slugs, traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The Vrexian destroyer's armor held for exactly 14 seconds before catastrophic structural failure tore it apart from within. One down, Zixthor said softly. 299 to go. The Vrexians were initially unconcerned. This was acceptable losses against a primitive enemy. Then the humans showed them something else. The holographic display shifted to show a different section of the battlefield. Here, 3 Vrexian cruisers advanced on what appeared to be a lone human vessel larger than their fighters, but still dwarfed by the Vrexian warships. This is the UNSV Constitution, Zixthor explained. One of only 5 human vessels designed specifically for military purposes, rather than being converted from civilian craft. The Vrexians detected high energy readings and assumed it was their main battle platform. They were half right. The Vrexian cruisers opened fire simultaneously, their plasma batteries releasing concentrated streams of superheated matter that could melt through meters of reinforced hull plating. The human vessel didn't dodge. Instead, it split apart. What the Vrexians had thought was one ship was actually 27 smaller vessels flying in perfect formation, their electronic signatures synchronized to appear as a single larger craft. As the plasma streams passed harmlessly through the spaces where the ship wasn't, the human vessels scattered like a breaking wave, each one targeting a different section of the 3 Vrexian cruisers. Deception, Ambassador Thalnara observed. They're using psychological warfare. They're using everything, Zixthor corrected. The humans have a saying, if you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics are terrible. They have no intention of fighting fairly. Counselor Vexinar studied the tactical displays with the practiced eye of a warrior. Clever tricks, yes, but tricks don't win wars against the Vrexians. Where are the human capital ships? Where is their fleet strength? An excellent question, Zixthor replied. The Vrexians asked the same thing. They assumed the humans were stalling, buying time for a main fleet to arrive. So they split their force. The dreadnoughts and half the destroyer screen continued toward Earth to eliminate the presumed reinforcements. The remaining ships stayed to hunt down and destroy the harassing human forces. The hologram split into multiple screens, showing different battle zones across the Sol system. This is where the Vrexians made their fatal error. They divided their strength against an enemy they didn't understand. One screen showed the group of Vrexian vessels that had remained at the system's edge. They systematically began hunting the human fighters, using their superior sensors and firepower to track down and eliminate the smaller craft. For several hours, this strategy appeared to be working. Human casualty counts climbed steadily. The Vraxians destroyed 73 human vessels in the first 6 hours of systematic hunting, Zixthor reported. They were pleased with their progress. Then they discovered they had a problem. The tactical overlay showed something peculiar. As the Vraxian ships maneuvered to engage human targets, they were gradually being drawn further apart, stretched across hundreds of thousands of kilometers of space. Each pursuit seemed reasonable: a single destroyer chasing down a damaged human fighter, a cruiser investigating a debris field for survivors. The humans weren't running, Ambassador Krivan said, understanding dawning in his luminescent eyes. They were hurting. Precisely, Zixthor confirmed. Every fleeing human ship was leading its pursuer to a predetermined location. Every desperate last stand was positioning the Vraxians exactly where the humans wanted them. And once the Vraxian formation was sufficiently fragmented, the display showed the system's asteroid belt, a debris field billions of kilometers across between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. The scattered Vraxian vessels suddenly found themselves surrounded by what their sensors had identified as ordinary asteroids that began to move. Camouflaged vessels, Miraseth said, leaning forward with renewed interest, hidden among the natural bodies. Not just vessels, Zixthor zoomed in on one of the moving asteroids. As they watched, the rocky exterior cracked and fell away, revealing something underneath that made several council members recoil in shock. It wasn't a ship. It was a weapons platform the size of a small moon, bristling with hundreds of railguns, missile tubes, and what appeared to be primitive but effective laser arrays. And there were dozens of them, scattered throughout the asteroid field, each one surrounded by carefully positioned Vraxian targets. The humans call them defense stations, Zixthor explained. They've been building them for decades, ever since they developed the capability to move and mine asteroids. Each one is essentially a floating fortress, powered by fusion reactors and armed with enough kinetic munitions to level a continent. They're ungainly, slow, and impossible to maneuver, but they don't need to maneuver when the enemy comes to them. The Vraxian vessels, now isolated and surrounded, attempted to fight their way clear, but the humans had planned for this too. While the defense stations opened fire with devastating salvos of railgun rounds and missiles, the fleeing human fighters suddenly reversed course, attacking the Vraxians from behind. Caught between the hammer and the anvil, the Vraxian hunting party was systematically destroyed. 47 Vraxian vessels eliminated, Zixthor reported, his voice carefully neutral, in exchange for 21 human fighters and 0 defense stations. The Vraxians at the asteroid belt are requesting immediate reinforcement. And the dreadnoughts? Vexnar asked. The ones approaching Earth? Zixthor's appendages flickered in what council members had learned to recognize as the Centauri equivalent of grim satisfaction. That counselor is where this situation, transformed from a surprising human, defensive action into something that has the entire intelligence community reconsidering our understanding of human nature. He shifted the display to show the 5 massive Vraxian dreadnoughts and their escort screen approaching the blue-green world of Earth. The Vraxians expected to find Earth defended by the humans' main fleet. Instead, they found this. The display showed a single vessel orbiting Earth in a high polar trajectory. It was sleek where Vraxian ships were brutal, elegant where they were functional, and it was ancient. That design... Thalnara's crystalline voice cracked with disbelief. That's impossible. The vessel identifies itself as the ISS Remembrance, Zixthor continued. ISS standing for International Spaceship, a designation the humans haven't used in over 2 centuries. According to its transponder codes, which our analysts have verified as authentic, that ship was built 437 years ago. The council chamber erupted in confusion. Ambassador Krivan's bioluminescence flared bright with agitation. 4 centuries? Their technological revolution only began 600 years ago. They've barely had interplanetary capability for 300 years. How could they have built that ship when they were still fighting wars among themselves on their planetary surface? Zixthor finished. Still dependent on chemical rockets for space access. Still decades away from establishing their first permanent off-world colony. Yes, those were all accurate assessments. which is why none of our intelligence services predicted this. He zoomed in on the ancient vessel. Despite its age, it appeared to be in perfect condition, its hull gleaming with recent maintenance. The humans have been hiding their capabilities from us, not just recently, for centuries. While we watched them slowly expand through their solar system, developing each new technology at what seemed a normal, even sluggish pace, they were simultaneously pursuing classified military projects. The Remembrance was one of those projects, built in secret at a facility on the dark side of their moon, funded through covert budgets and hidden appropriations. It was, as far as we can determine, their first attempt at a true warship designed not to convert civilian technology for military use, but built from the ground up as an instrument of war. Mirazeth studied the vessel with ancient eyes. What makes it significant? It appears smaller than several Vraxian cruisers. Age doesn't confer advantage. No, Zixthor agreed, but experience does, and the Remembrance has 4 centuries of testing, refinement, and upgrades behind it. More importantly, it represents something the Vraxians completely failed to anticipate about human nature. The display shifted to show the moment of contact. The lead Vraxian dreadnought transmitted the standard demand for surrender. The Remembrance's response was brief and, in retrospect, should have warned the Vraxians about the danger they faced. "They will remember us," the human commander had said. "Make sure of it." The battle that followed lasted exactly 9 minutes. The Remembrance moved first, accelerating at impossible speeds directly toward the Vraxian formation. Point defense batteries from 3 dreadnoughts filled space with deadly energy, creating an interlocking web of plasma fire that nothing should have survived. The human ship didn't dodge. It didn't need to. "Energy shielding," Vexnar breathed. But our intelligence indicated humans hadn't developed deflector technology. They hadn't, Zixthor confirmed. Not in the way we understand it. But humans have a peculiar talent for solving the same problem, through completely different approaches. They call this ablative armor, layers of material designed to vaporize when struck by energy weapons, carrying the heat away from the ship in clouds of plasma. Primitive compared to proper deflectors, but effective enough. The Remembrance punched through the defensive fire, shedding armor like a molting insect but maintaining structural integrity. When it reached optimal range, it fired. What emerged from the human ship wasn't plasma or energy beams. It was metal solid. Physical projectiles launched at relativistic speeds by magnetic accelerators that ran the entire length of the ship's spine. Each round was the size of a ground vehicle, and they moved at 20% of light speed. At those velocities, mass became a weapon of apocalyptic force. The first round struck the lead dreadnought's shields. The shields held for approximately 1/10 of a second, before the sheer kinetic energy overwhelmed the field generators. The round continued through the hull, punching a hole 3 meters wide through armored plating that had been designed to withstand sustained plasma bombardment. The second round followed a nanosecond later, then the third, fourth, and fifth. The Remembrance fired a continuous stream of projectiles, each one aimed with computer precision at critical systems identified centuries ago by human intelligence. Reactor containment, shield generators, weapons batteries, command decks. The lead dreadnought began to come apart, secondary explosions cascading through its structure as system failures triggered chain reactions. The Vraxians had never designed their ships to withstand this type of attack, because no one used kinetic weapons at these scales. It was considered inefficient, wasteful, a crude approach abandoned by civilized species. But there was nothing crude about watching the dreadnought's reactor containment fail, releasing enough energy to vaporize what remained of the vessel and damage 2 nearby escorts. The other dreadnoughts attempted to fall back and regroup, Zixthor continued, his voice taking on the tone of a professor, dissecting a historical battle. But the Remembrance had already launched its second wave. Watch. Small objects detached from the human ship, dozens of them, spreading out in a coordinated pattern. At first, they appeared to be standard missiles. Then they began to accelerate under their own power, and their sensor signatures changed. Autonomous attack drones, Thalnara identified, but moving with more intelligence than standard programming should allow. Because they're not programmed, Zixthor said quietly. They're piloted. Those are human soldiers, each one sealed in an armored pod barely larger than their own body, controlling a drone armed with high-yield explosives and kinetic penetrators. The humans call them Lancers, and each one is a volunteer who knows their mission is one way. The council chamber fell silent. The concept was horrifying warriors so committed to their cause that they would seal themselves in tiny spacecraft and fly them directly into enemy vessels, using their own judgment and reflexes to guide the final approach. That's barbaric, Krivon protested. We banned such tactics millennia ago as violations of fundamental decency. The humans never signed your treaty, Zixthor observed, and they would argue there's nothing barbaric about soldiers choosing to sacrifice themselves to protect their world. The Lancers are all veterans, experienced pilots who volunteered specifically for this mission. They knew what they were doing. On the display, the Lancers swarmed the remaining dreadnoughts. Vraxian point defense destroyed many of them, but the pilots were too skilled, too determined, too unpredictable. One by one, they found gaps in the defensive fire, exploiting microsecond timing windows and using the debris from destroyed Lancers as cover. When they impacted, the dreadnoughts' shields flared and held. But the Lancers weren't carrying simple explosives. Each one deployed a device the humans called a breach charge, a shaped nuclear weapon designed to focus the entire force of a fusion detonation into a cone narrow enough to punch through shielding. 3 more dreadnoughts died in nuclear fire. The last one, seeing the annihilation of its fleet, attempted to do what Vraxians always did when facing defeat. It oriented toward Earth and prepared to fire its main bombardment cannon, intending to at least inflict casualties on the planet that had dared to resist. The Remembrance put a railgun round through its reactor before it could complete the firing sequence. Total Vraxian losses, Zixthor said into the silence. 147 vessels, including all 5 dreadnoughts. Human losses, 83 fighters, 21 Lancer pilots, and the Remembrance, which was too heavily damaged to be salvaged. The crew evacuated before reactor failure and are being hailed as heroes on every human world and station. He paused, letting the enormity of the defeat sink in. The Vraxian hegemony has controlled this region of space for 10,000 years. They have subjugated hundreds of species, absorbed dozens of civilizations, and never not once been defeated in open warfare. Until 37 hours ago, when a species we classified as primitive destroyed an entire attack fleet without calling for outside assistance. Mirazeth's form flickered with something that might have been respect. The Vraxians will not accept this defeat. They will return with greater numbers, more powerful weapons. They will commit their full military might to crushing humanity as an example to other species who might consider resistance. Yes, Zixthor agreed. They will, which is why I called this emergency session. The question before us is simple. Do we intervene, or do we watch as the Vraxians inevitably overwhelm humanity through sheer attrition? You assume the humans will lose a prolonged conflict, Vexnar observed. After what we've just witnessed, I'm not certain that's a valid assumption. The Vraxian hegemony can field 10,000 warships, Zixthor countered. The humans have at most 300 combat-capable vessels, and most of those are converted civilian craft. The mathematics are simple, are they? Vexnar leaned back, his massive form settling into his seat. I have studied warfare across 100 species and 1,000 campaigns. The humans just demonstrated something I've only seen in a handful of civilizations. They understand that war is not about technology or numbers. It's about will, and they possess a will to survive that borders on the pathological. He gestured at the tactical displays. Consider their tactics. They sacrifice material resources without hesitation. They risk their lives in ways we would consider suicidal. They fight with weapons we consider obsolete, using strategies we've forgotten, and they win because they refuse to accept the logical outcome of the battle. They're also learning, Thalnara added. Every engagement taught them something new about Vraxian capabilities. They adapted, evolved their tactics, exploited weaknesses. How much will they improve after analyzing this victory? And there's another factor, Mirazeth said softly. One that concerns me more than their tactical prowess. Ambassador Zixthor, show them the transmission that arrived 3 hours ago. Zixthor manipulated the controls, and a new hologram appeared at the center of the council chamber. It showed a human female in military uniform, standing on what appeared to be a command deck. Her species' age was difficult for most council members to judge, but her bearing suggested experience and authority. Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding officer of the United Nations Space Force, Zixthor identified. This message was broadcast on open channels to every major power within 50 light-years of Earth, including the Vraxian hegemony. The holographic admiral began to speak. Her words translated into the Council's common tongue. To the Galactic Council and all species who witnessed this message, humanity has been attacked without provocation by the Vraxian hegemony. We have defeated their attack fleet. We mourn our fallen. We honor their sacrifice, and we send this message to make one thing absolutely clear. She paused, and something in her expression made several council members unconsciously lean back. The Vraxians will interpret this as an invitation to escalate. They will return with greater forces, determined to punish us for our resistance. This is their nature, we understand it, and we do not judge them for it. But neither will we submit to it. Humanity has fought wars among ourselves for 10,000 years. We have refined the art of violence to a degree that shames us, and we have paid for that knowledge with oceans of blood and mountains of corpses. We put those wars behind us when we reached for the stars, hoping to leave that dark history on our homeworld. But we never forgot the lessons. We never abandoned the skills, and we never lost the capacity to defend ourselves. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. To the Vraxian hegemony we say this: come again if you must. Bring your dreadnoughts. Bring your battle fleets. Bring everything you have. But understand that you will not be fighting humans alone anymore. You will be fighting 300 years of orbital fortifications. You will be fighting asteroid bases that can withstand bombardment for months. You will be fighting automated defense grids that never sleep, never tire, and never stop firing. You will be fighting humans in gel pods pulling 30 gravities, humans in Lancer ships accepting one-way missions, humans in mining vessels converted to warships, humans in powered armor boarding your vessels, humans in habitats scattered across a dozen worlds, and humans who will absolutely, positively refuse to surrender no matter how logical that surrender might appear. She leaned forward, staring directly into the camera. To the Galactic Council, we say this: we applied for membership in your organization. You rejected us, stating we were too primitive, too violent, too young. Perhaps you were right. But we ask you to consider that you are about to watch the most powerful military force in this region of space expend enormous resources trying to conquer a single star system, and we ask you to consider what that means for the stability of your carefully maintained galactic order. When the Vraxians commit their full fleet to invading Earth, they will leave their other territories weakened. The species they have conquered will see an opportunity. The borders they have maintained through intimidation will become vulnerable, and the balance of power that has kept this region stable for millennia will shift. Admiral Chen straightened.
Humanity is offering the Galactic Council a choice.
Admit us as members now. Allow us to petition for protection under your mutual defense agreements, and help us negotiate a peace with the Vraxian hegemony that preserves both our sovereignty and their honor. Or refuse. Maintain your position that we are too primitive for membership, and watch as we defend ourselves by any means necessary. Consequences to galactic stability be damned. You have 72 hours to decide. After that, we begin implementing contingency protocols that some of you will find concerning. Chen out. The hologram faded. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Ambassador Creven spoke, his voice subdued. Contingency protocols. What does she mean? Our intelligence services are still analyzing the statement, Zixthor admitted. But preliminary assessments are troubling. The humans appear to have developed something they call scorched earth tactics. Strategies designed to make conquest so costly that the enemy abandons the attempt. Explain. Miraseth commanded. The humans have seeded their asteroid belt with antimatter devices, Zixthor said bluntly. Not many their production capabilities are limited. But enough. If the Vraxians attempt a full-scale invasion, the humans are prepared to detonate these devices, destabilizing the orbits of millions of asteroids and turning their entire inner system into a debris field that will take centuries to clear. They would destroy their own colonies, Thalnara protested, their mining stations, their habitats. They would make their system worthless to conquer, Vexnar interrupted, and there was something like admiration in his voice. The Vraxians value resources. They don't conduct warfare for glory or revenge, they expand to acquire territory, materials, and labor. If humans render their system uninhabitable, the Vraxians gain nothing from victory except casualties and wasted resources. It's insane, Creven muttered. It's brilliant, Vexnar countered. And it's exactly the kind of lateral thinking that wins wars against superior opponents. The humans can't defeat the Vraxians militarily, so they're changing the nature of the conflict. They're forcing the Vraxians to ask themselves, is this planet worth the cost? There's more, Zixthor said quietly. Our analysts have detected elevated neutrino emissions from several human facilities. They believe the humans are conducting crash programs in multiple areas: advanced propulsion, directed energy weapons, autonomous combat systems. They're accelerating their technological development, throwing resources at every project that might give them an edge. He manipulated the display again, showing probability assessments. If the Vraxians delay their response even a year, human capabilities will have improved dramatically. If they wait 5 years, the humans might achieve strategic parity. And if they wait a decade, the humans will have weapons we can't predict, Miraseth finished. Because they don't follow our technological paths. They innovate differently, think differently, fight differently. High Counselor Miraseth rose, her ethereal form expanding to fill the upper portions of the chamber. We have heard the evidence. We have witnessed humanity's capabilities. Now we must decide. The question before us has 3 parts. First, should humanity be admitted to the Galactic Council? We previously rejected their application on the grounds that they were technologically primitive and culturally unstable. Do the events of the past 37 hours change that assessment? Second, if we admit humanity, are we prepared to defend them under our mutual protection treaties? This would place us in direct confrontation with the Vraxian hegemony, a conflict we have carefully avoided for 3,000 years. Third, if we do not admit humanity, what are the consequences for galactic stability? Will we be responsible for the collapse of the regional power balance? Will we witness the emergence of a desperate human faction, willing to use increasingly extreme measures to survive? She lowered herself back to the table. I call for preliminary statements from council members. Ambassador Krivon, as the representative who initially evaluated humanity's application, you may speak first. The Phosphor Collective's ambassador dimmed his bioluminescence in a gesture of deep consideration. I must admit my assessment was flawed. I evaluated humanity based on their public technological capabilities, never imagining they would possess secret military programs centuries in advance of their civilian technology. This was a failure of intelligence and imagination on my part. That said, he continued, his light brightening slightly, I am not convinced this makes them suitable for council membership. Yes, they defeated one Vraxian attack fleet through cleverness and desperation, but their very willingness to consider antimatter attacks on their own system demonstrates a reckless disregard for consequences. Such a species could be dangerously destabilizing to the council itself. Counterpoint, Vexnar rumbled. The Chromagian Alliance recognizes strength when we see it. Humanity has proven they will defend their territory with every resource at their disposal. This is not recklessness, it is determination. We would be honored to stand beside such warriors, and we support their immediate admission to the council. The Silicon Concordat concurs. Thalnara's crystalline voice chimed. However, we propose conditional membership. Admit them, extend them protection, but require them to submit their military programs to council oversight. They cannot be permitted to destabilize the region with uncontrolled weapons development. They would never accept those terms, Zixthor observed, and frankly I'm not certain we could enforce them even if they did. The humans have demonstrated a talent for secrecy. How many other programs are we unaware of? What other capabilities have they hidden? Perhaps that's the wrong question, Miraseth suggested. Perhaps we should ask, what could humanity contribute to the Galactic Council if they were members? Not just militarily, but culturally, scientifically, philosophically. She gestured at the display showing Earth and its colonies. Consider what we've learned about human nature in the past 2 days. They are innovative problem solvers who refuse to accept conventional limitations. They possess a survival instinct that borders on the supernatural. They honor sacrifice and valor in ways that most modern species have forgotten. But more than that, she continued, they are unified in a way that few species achieve. They call themselves humanity, one species, one identity, despite the fact that they're scattered across multiple worlds and have been divided by conflict for most of their history. They have internal disagreements, certainly, but when threatened from outside, they present a unified front. That unity is rare and valuable. Ambassador Zurketh of the Quantum Collective, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. His voice resonated on frequencies that made the air shimmer. The Quantum Collective has been observing humanity with great interest for decades. We have noted their peculiar approach to problem-solving, their willingness to attempt solutions that other species would dismiss as impossible. This is not simply stubbornness, it is a fundamental difference in cognitive processing. When faced with an obstacle, most species calculate the optimal solution based on available resources and known physical laws. Humans do something different. They ask, what if the obstacle isn't really there? What if the problem can be redefined? What if the rules are wrong? This makes them maddening to predict but extraordinarily innovative. He paused, his form flickering through quantum states. The Quantum Collective supports humanity's admission to the Council, but we also issue a warning. We are inviting chaos into our ordered system. Humanity will not simply adapt to our ways. They will change us, challenge us, force us to reconsider assumptions we've held for millennia. We must be prepared for that disruption. Miraseth looked around the chamber. We have heard support, opposition, and caution. The time has come for a formal vote. But before we proceed, I want to share one more piece of information that arrived while we've been deliberating. She activated a new display, showing a communication from the Vraxian Hegemony's Central Command. The Vraxians have formally declared humanity to be a significant threat to regional stability, and have announced their intention to commit a full battle fleet to the conquest of the Sol system. 2,000 warships, including 30 dreadnoughts. They will arrive in approximately 4 months. The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. 2,000 ships, it was an armada large enough to threaten major council worlds, let alone a single primitive system. They're making an example, Vexnar said grimly. They want every species in the region to see what happens to those who resist the hegemony. This isn't just about conquering Earth anymore. This is about maintaining their reputation for invincibility. Which means they cannot afford to fail, Mirazeth observed. If humanity somehow manages to resist even this force, the Vraxian hegemony's power across dozens of sectors will crumble. Every subjugated species will rise. Every border will become contested. The entire regional order will collapse into chaos. Then the humans have already won a strategic victory, Zurketh noted, his quantum form stabilizing momentarily. Even if they lose the battle, they've forced the Vraxians to commit resources on a scale that weakens them elsewhere. The humans have turned their own survival into a fulcrum that could shift the balance of power across multiple sectors. Ambassador Thalnara's crystalline structure resonated with concern. High Counselor, we must consider the implications if we admit humanity to the Council now. The Vraxians will view it as a declaration of support. They may interpret Council membership as our willingness to defend Earth. Are we prepared for war with the hegemony? Are we prepared for the alternative? Mirazeth countered. If we refuse, humanity now, after they've demonstrated such remarkable capabilities, what message does that send? That the Council only accepts members who are weak enough to need our protection, but strong enough to not be inconvenient. That we abandon species who dare to defend themselves successfully. She let the questions hang in the air for a moment before continuing. I have led this council for 900 years. I have witnessed the rise of the Vraxian hegemony from a minor aggressive species to the dominant military power in this region. And I have watched year after year as we made compromises with them to maintain stability. We allowed them to absorb the Keltharian Union because opposing them would have been costly. We permitted them to vassalize the Morpheus cluster because intervention seemed impractical. We have drawn line after line in space, and every time the Vraxians approached that line, we redrew it a little further back. Her ethereal form flickered with intensity. I am tired of retreating. I am tired of watching civilizations fall because we chose stability over principle. The humans are offering us an opportunity to finally say enough. Yes, it will be costly. Yes, it will be dangerous. But perhaps it is time we remembered that some things are worth fighting for. The chamber fell into profound silence. For many of the younger council members, this was the first time they had heard the ancient High Counselor speak with such passion. Finally, Ambassador Krivon dimmed his lights in a gesture of respect. High Counselor, you shame me with your courage. I retract my opposition. The Phosphor Collective will support humanity's admission, Though I pray to the eternal luminescence that we are equal to the challenge we are accepting, the Centauri Collective has always supported admission, Zixthor added. But I want the Council to understand exactly what we're voting for. If we admit humanity and extend them protection, the Vraxians will test our resolve. They may not attack Earth directly, that would trigger our mutual defense agreements, but they will probe our borders, threaten our shipping, create incidents designed to force us to either back down or escalate. Let them probe, Vexnar growled. The Chromagian fleets have grown complacent with centuries of peace. A reminder of what we're capable of would do my people good, and I would relish the opportunity to fight alongside these humans. They remind me of what my own species was like before we became comfortable. Ambassador Selthar of the Radiant Assembly, whose species had remained neutral through most of the discussion, finally spoke. The Assembly recognizes the military and strategic arguments being presented, but we must also consider the cultural implications. Humanity is applying for Council membership at a time of crisis, under threat of invasion. Will they prove to be stable, cooperative members in times of peace? Or will they be eternally poised for conflict, seeing threats where none exist? A valid concern, Miraseth acknowledged. Ambassador Zixthor, your intelligence services have studied human culture extensively. What is your assessment? Zixthor's manipulator appendages moved in complex patterns as he organized his thoughts. Human culture is contradictory. They are simultaneously the most violent and most compassionate species we've encountered. They wage wars with terrifying efficiency, yet they also produce art, literature, and philosophy of remarkable depth. They can be tribal and exclusionary, yet their society has repeatedly expanded its definition of us to include former enemies. Consider their history, he continued, pulling up historical data on the displays. 300 years ago, humanity was fractured into hundreds of competing nations, many of them armed with nuclear weapons. They fought constant wars over resources, ideology, and territory. Then they discovered they were not alone in the universe. One of our survey ships made inadvertent contact with a human space station. That single event transformed their entire civilization. The displays showed images of early human history cities, devastated by war, followed by gradual unification, then the explosive expansion into their solar system. They realized that their internal conflicts were insignificant compared to the challenge of surviving in a hostile universe. Within 50 years, they had formed a unified planetary government. Within a century, they had colonies on 4 worlds and dozens of orbital habitats. They didn't abandon their capacity for violence, they redirected it outward, toward protecting their species rather than destroying each other. That transformation is why I believe they will be valuable Council members, Zixthor concluded. They understand the necessity of cooperation. They've lived through the alternative, and they possess something most Council species lack: recent memory of what it means to fight for survival. That memory makes them dangerous, yes, but it also makes them loyal allies. They understand the value of friendship in a hostile universe. High Counselor Miraseth raised herself to her full height, her ethereal form pulsing with authority. We have debated the question thoroughly. The time has come to vote. This decision will shape the future of our region for generations to come. Choose wisely, but choose with conviction. The question before the Council is threefold, but each part depends upon the others. I will frame it as a single proposition. Shall humanity be admitted to the Galactic Council as a full member species, with all rights and protections granted under our founding charter, acknowledging that such admission will place us in potential conflict with the Vraxian hegemony? Each of you will cast your vote. A 3/4 majority is required for admission of new members. The vote will be recorded and transmitted to all member worlds, as tradition demands. Ambassador Krevan of the Phosphor Collective, you may cast the first vote. Krevan's bioluminescence flared bright. The Phosphor Collective votes in favor of admission. The Centauri Collective votes in favor, Zixthor declared immediately. The Chromagian Alliance votes in favor, Vexnar rumbled, and pledges its fleets to humanity's defense. The Silicon Concordat votes in favor with reservations regarding military oversight, Thalnara chimed. The Quantum Collective votes in favor, Zurketh resonated. We welcome the chaos humanity will bring. It is long overdue. One by one, the council members cast their votes. The tally appeared on the central display, updating with each declaration. 37 in favor, 5 opposed, 4 abstaining, 1 requesting time for consultation with their home government. The Radiant Assembly, Selthar said carefully, requests clarification before voting. If humanity is admitted, what specific obligations will council members have regarding their defense? Will we be required to commit military forces immediately? Or will there be a diplomatic phase where we attempt negotiation with the Vraxians? Standard protocols apply, Miraseth responded. Admission grants humanity the right to petition for council intervention under mutual defense agreements. However, military commitment requires a separate vote based on the specific circumstances of each crisis. Diplomacy is always attempted first. We do not rush to war, but we do not abandon our members either. The Radiant Assembly abstains, Selthar decided. We are not opposed to humanity's admission, but neither can we commit to potential military action without further consultation. Noted, Miraseth acknowledged. The vote stands at 37 in favor, 5 opposed, 5 abstaining. This exceeds the 3/4 threshold of voting members. By the authority vested in me as High Counselor, I declare that humanity has been accepted as a full member species of the Galactic Council. She paused, letting the magnitude of the decision settle over the chamber. Ambassador Zixthor, you will lead a delegation to Earth immediately. Inform Admiral Chen of our decision. Offer her our congratulations and our support, and begin preliminary discussions regarding defensive preparations. There's something else we need to address, Vexnar interrupted. We've admitted humanity, but the Vraxian Armada is still coming. Admission alone won't stop 2,000 warships. We need to send a clear message to the hegemony that humanity is now under council protection, a message they cannot ignore. What do you propose? Miraseth asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. I propose we station a council fleet at Earth, Vexnar declared. Not a token force, a legitimate battle group. 20 capital ships supporting escorts and clear rules of engagement. If the Vraxians attack, they attack all of us. That's a war they cannot afford, no matter how damaged their pride might be. The Chromagian Alliance will commit 5 heavy cruisers and their escort squadrons, he continued. I challenge other council members to match that commitment. Let's show the Vraxians that the balance of power has shifted. Ambassador Krevan's lights flickered with concern. That's a significant escalation. The Vraxians may interpret it as a provocation rather than a deterrent. Good, Vexnar retorted. Let them feel provoked. Let them understand that the era of unopposed expansion has ended. They can either negotiate with us as equals or face the combined might of the Council. The Centauri Collective will commit 3 battle cruisers, Zixthor announced, and our advanced sensor platforms. If there's going to be a confrontation, we should at least see it coming. Slowly, other commitments followed. The Silicon Concordat offered 2 carriers and their fighter wings. The Quantum Collective promised 3 of their experimental phase ships, vessels that could shift between dimensions to avoid conventional weapons. Even some of the smaller council members pledged frigates and destroyers. Within an hour, the council had assembled a fleet of 43 warships representing 17 different species. It wasn't enough to match the Vraxian Armada in raw numbers, but it was a force significant enough to make any attack enormously costly. This fleet will be designated the First Council Expeditionary Force, Miraseth declared. Its mission is to defend Earth and demonstrate Council unity. Ambassador Vexnar, as the representative who proposed this action, will you accept command of the force? The massive Chromagian stood, his armored hide gleaming under the chamber's lights. I accept with honor, High Counselor. My flagship will depart for Earth within the day. Other vessels can join us as they arrive. Then it is decided, Miraseth said. We have crossed the threshold. There is no turning back now. May the ancient stars guide us through what comes next. Commander Vexnar stood on the command deck of the Cass Unbroken, his flagship, as it emerged from slip space at the edge of the Sol system. Around him, his bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their displays showing the tactical situation in humanity's home system. What they found was not what they expected. Commander, his sensor officer reported, I'm detecting significant defensive installations throughout the system, far more than intelligence predicted. Show me, Vexnar commanded. The holographic display expanded, revealing the Sol system in detail. What had been described as a handful of defense stations in the asteroid belt had multiplied into a network of hundreds of platforms. The major planet's moons were dotted with weapon emplacements. Orbital space around Earth was so crowded with satellites, stations, and defensive platforms that navigation required careful plotting. How long have they been building all this? His tactical officer wondered aloud. Decades, Vexnar realized. Maybe longer. They've been preparing for this since before they applied for council membership, perhaps since before they even knew we existed. A communication came through on standard council frequencies. Council vessel unbroken, this is Earth Defense Command. We've been expecting you. Welcome to Sol System. Please transmit your navigation intentions and we'll provide safe passage through our defensive grid. They're treating us like guests, Vexnar noted with approval, even though they probably don't need our help. Wise, diplomatic. He activated the communication channel. Earth Defense Command. This is Commander Vexnar of the Chromagian Alliance, commanding the 1st Council Expeditionary Force. We request permission to take up defensive positions in Earth orbit. Permission granted, Commander. We're transmitting optimal positioning coordinates now. Fair warning. We've made some improvements to our defensive capabilities since the Vraxian attack. Try not to be alarmed. The Unbroken and the advance elements of the Council fleet moved toward Earth, and as they did, the full scope of human preparation became apparent. The defense stations weren't just weapons platforms, they were interconnected nodes in a network that could coordinate fire across millions of kilometers. Each major installation had backup power, redundant communications, and enough ammunition to sustain fire for months. By the stars, Vexnar's tactical officer breathed. They've turned their entire system into a fortress. Not just a fortress, Vexnar corrected. A trap. Look at the positioning of these stations. They're not arranged for maximum coverage, they're arranged to create killing fields. Zones where crossfire is optimal. Places where enemy ships will be forced to choose between bad options and worse ones. As the Unbroken settled into orbit, a shuttle launched from Earth's surface, carrying Admiral Chen and her diplomatic team. Vexnar met them in the flagship's main hangar, curious to finally meet the human who had defied the Vraxian hegemony. Admiral. Chen was shorter than he expected. Humans were a small species compared to Chromagians, but she carried herself with unmistakable authority. She approached with her hand extended. A human gesture he had learned meant peaceful greeting. Commander Vexnar, she said, her voice carrying through the translation device. Thank you for coming. Your presence here means more to humanity than you might realize. He carefully adjusted his grip to avoid crushing her comparatively fragile hand. Admiral Chen, I've watched recordings of your defense against the Vraxians. It was impressive. My people respect courage, and you have shown no shortage of it. We did what was necessary, she replied. But we're not naive enough to think we can hold against the force that's coming. Not alone. Your fleet gives us options we wouldn't have otherwise. Speaking of options, Vexnar said, perhaps you can explain what your defensive grid is truly capable of. My tactical team is overwhelmed by what they're seeing. Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that reminded Vexnar of a predator showing its teeth. Why don't I show you? We've prepared a demonstration. An hour later, Vexnar found himself in Earth Defense Command's primary operations center, deep beneath the planet's surface. The room was a cathedral of technology, with holographic displays showing every ship, station, and defensive platform in the entire system. This is impressive, he acknowledged, but the Vraxians will have their own sensor networks, their own tactical coordination. What makes your system superior? Scale and redundancy, Admiral Chen explained. Every platform can function independently, but they're also connected through quantum-entangled communication nodes. No lag, no signal degradation, no possibility of jamming. The Vraxians will face a defense grid that reacts faster than they can adapt. She gestured to one of her officers who activated a simulation. The display showed a hypothetical Vraxian attack fleet entering the system, and as Vexnar watched, the human defensive grid responded with perfect coordination. Platforms that appeared dormant suddenly activated. Asteroids that seemed inert revealed themselves as camouflaged weapon stations. Seemingly empty regions of space filled with minefields that hadn't been there moments before. You're using mobile platforms, Vexnar realized. Weapons that can reposition between attacks. We learned from the first battle, Chen confirmed. The Vraxians adapt quickly, so we built a defense that adapts faster. Every station can relocate using low-power ion drives. It takes time, but between engagements we can completely reconfigure our defensive layout. The Vraxians will be fighting a different battlefield every time they attack. Clever, Vexnar admitted. But there's something else, isn't there? Something you're not showing me yet. Chen's smile widened. You're perceptive, Commander. Yes, there's more. But before I show you, I need to know. The Council fleet that's coming, how committed are they to this defense? If the situation deteriorates, will they retreat to preserve their ships or will they stand with us? It was a fair question and Vexnar appreciated her directness. I cannot speak for every Council member. Some of them committed ships because it was politically advantageous, others because they genuinely believe in defending Council members. But I can tell you this, my ships will not retreat. The Cremagian Alliance does not abandon its allies and we do not flee from battle. We will stand. Good, Chen said, because what I'm about to show you might change how you think about this entire conflict. She nodded to her operations officer. Show him Project Thunderchild. The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be a dense asteroid field near Jupiter's orbit. Then the perspective zoomed in, penetrating the rock to reveal what lay beneath. By the ancestors, Vexnar whispered. Hidden inside the hollowed asteroids were ships. Not small fighters or converted freighters, actual warships built in secret over decades. They were larger than anything the humans had revealed so far, and their design was unlike anything in the Council database. We call them dreadnoughts, Chen explained, though I understand that's also the Vraxian designation for their capital ships. Poetic, perhaps. We've been building them since before the first Vraxian attack, keeping them hidden, waiting for the moment when we'd need them. How many? Vexnar asked, his tactical mind already calculating. 12 completed, 4 more under construction. Each one carries a main railgun that can fire projectiles at 30% of light speed. Enough secondary armament to engage multiple targets simultaneously, and armor thick enough to withstand sustained plasma bombardment. They won't be invincible, nothing is, but they'll make the Vraxians pay in blood for every meter they advance. Vexnar studied the specifications scrolling across the display. The ships were crude compared to Council vessels, built with brute force engineering rather than elegant technology. But they were effective, and more importantly, they were unexpected. You've been preparing for total war, he said, since before you even applied for Council membership. We've been preparing to survive, Chen corrected. When we first detected Vraxian transmissions and realized there were species out here who conquered others for resources, we knew we had 2 choices: submit or prepare. We chose preparation. The Council application was always meant as a first option, a peaceful path to security. But we never stopped working on the second option. And if the Council had admitted you earlier, before the Vraxian attack? Chen's expression became somber. Then these ships would have remained hidden. We would have contributed to Council defense through conventional means and kept our true capabilities secret. We prefer peace, Commander, but we're good at war, very good. 10,000 years of practice tends to create expertise. You're telling me this now because you want me to understand what humanity brings to the Council, Vexnar realized. Not just as members who need protection, but as allies who can protect others. Exactly, Chen confirmed. When this crisis is over, assuming we survive it, humanity will be in a position to help defend other Council members. We're not looking to expand or conquer. We just want to ensure that what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else. That no species has to face the choice between submission and extinction. Vexnar was silent for a long moment, his warrior's mind processing the implications. Humanity wasn't just another Council member to be protected. They were potentially the strongest military force the Council had ever admitted. Given time to fully develop their capabilities, they could rival even the Vraxian hegemony. The other Council members need to know about this, he said finally, not as a threat but as a strategic assessment. Some of them committed ships thinking they were protecting a weak species. They should understand they're actually allying with a sleeping war machine. Will that change their commitment? Chen asked. For some, yes, Vexnar admitted. A few will withdraw, concerned about humanity becoming too powerful. But others, especially those who have lived under Vraxian intimidation, will see opportunity, an ally strong enough to finally check Vraxian expansion. Then tell them, Chen said. Complete transparency is the only way this alliance works. We've hidden our capabilities from potential enemies, but we won't hide them from friends. 4 weeks later, the Vraxian armada arrived at the edge of the Sol system. 2,000 warships emerged from slip space in perfect formation, a display of military power unprecedented in recent galactic history. At their center, the command dreadnought Eternal Victory broadcast on all frequencies. Humans of Earth, recognize that you face the full might of the Vraxian hegemony. Your resistance against our preliminary expedition was noted, but it changes nothing. You will submit to integration into the hegemony, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 standard hour to signal your surrender. In Earth Defense Command, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays with calculated calm. Around her, officers monitored 1,000 different readiness indicators, all showing green. The Council fleet held position in high orbit, their weapons charged but not locked. The hidden dreadnoughts waited in their asteroid camouflage. The defensive grid hummed with potential energy. They're not even trying to negotiate, Commander Vexnar observed. He had moved his command staff to Earth's operations center to better coordinate the combined defense. No diplomacy, no offer of terms, just immediate surrender or destruction. They can't appear weak, Chen replied. If they negotiate with us after we destroyed their first fleet, every conquered species in their territory will see it as a sign of vulnerability. So they have to demand unconditional surrender, which you're not going to give them. Which we're not going to give them, Chen confirmed. She activated the communication system, broadcasting on the same frequencies the Vraxians had used. Vraxian Command Vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force, speaking also on behalf of the Galactic Council. Your ultimatum is rejected. However, we offer you a counter-proposal. She paused, making sure every word was recorded and transmitted clearly. Withdraw your forces from the Sol system immediately. In exchange, humanity will not press charges with the Galactic Council regarding your unprovoked attack on a sovereign system. We will consider this matter closed, and no further hostilities will occur between our species. The response came 30 seconds later. The Vraxian commander had clearly been prepared for rejection. Your arrogance will be your extinction. The presence of Council vessels changes nothing. They will not risk war with the hegemony to save one primitive species. They will watch as we reduce your world to rubble, and then they will thank us for removing a dangerous variable from galactic affairs. He might be right about some of them, Vexnar muttered. Not all Council members have the stomach for real war. Then we'll find out who our real friends are, Chen said. She opened a priority channel to the Council fleet. All Council vessels, this is Earth Command. Hostile force has rejected diplomatic resolution and is advancing with clear intent to attack. Per mutual defense protocols, we are requesting Council support in repelling this invasion. We understand if individual vessels choose to withdraw, there will be no judgment, no political consequences. But those who stand with us should know. We're about to show the Vraxians what happens when you awaken sleeping giants. For a moment, there was silence on the Council frequency. Then Vexnar's voice boomed across the channel. Chromagian vessels, battle formation Alpha. Lock weapons on Vraxian Vanguard. No Chromagian ship will retreat from this fight. One by one, other Council ships confirmed their positions. A few frigates from cautious members did withdraw, accelerating out of the combat zone. But 40 ships remained, their crews committed to the defense of humanity's homeworld. All ships, weapons free, Chen ordered. Defensive grid, activate all platforms. Project Thunderchild, begin emergence sequence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's teach the hegemony a lesson about hubris. Throughout the system, asteroids cracked open like eggs, revealing the hidden dreadnoughts. Defensive platforms that had seemed dormant suddenly blazed with power. The Council fleet spread into supporting positions, their advanced shields reinforcing the human defensive line, and the Vraxian armada, expecting to face desperate humans and token Council support, suddenly found themselves staring at a defense in depth that would make any attack phenomenally costly. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the galaxy was watching. The Vraxian commander, war leader Throckmar, watched his tactical displays with growing unease. The situation was wrong. The intelligence reports had described a primitive system with minimal defenses. Instead, he faced hundreds of weapon platforms, 12 unknown capital ships, and a Council fleet that showed no signs of withdrawing. Analysis, he commanded his tactical officer. The human defensive grid is more extensive than predicted, the officer reported. approximately 473 active platforms, with power signatures suggesting weapons capable of engaging capital ships. The unknown vessels emerging from asteroid camouflage read as, War Leader. Those mass readings can't be correct. Show me. The display zoomed in on one of the human dreadnoughts as it cleared its rocky camouflage. The ship was massive, not as large as a Vraxian dreadnought, but substantial enough to pose a serious threat. And there were 12 of them. New contacts, sensors reported. Council reinforcements entering the system. Count is 23 additional warships, including 3 quantum collective phase ships. Throckmar's mandibles clicked with frustration. The strategic calculus had changed completely. Yes, he still possessed numerical superiority, but the cost of victory had risen dramatically. Every Vraxian ship destroyed here would be one less ship defending their borders, one less vessel suppressing rebellions, one less dreadnought enforcing their will across 100 systems. Tactical recommendation, his strategic advisor said carefully. We could conduct a limited bombardment to demonstrate our resolve, then withdraw to reassess. The humans have proven more formidable than anticipated. Perhaps the Council would accept a negotiated settlement where we admit weakness. Throckmar interrupted. Where we acknowledge that a primitive species forced the Vraxian hegemony to retreat. Do you understand what that would do to our position? Every vassal species would rise. Every border would need reinforcement. We would spend decades rebuilding our reputation. War Leader, with respect, we may spend decades rebuilding our fleet if we proceed. Throckmar studied the tactical situation, his military mind calculating probabilities. The humans had engineered this perfectly. They couldn't defeat his armada, not completely, but they could inflict casualties high enough to cripple Vraxian power across multiple sectors. And they had positioned themselves so that any attack on Earth would require engaging the Council fleet first. It was a trap, disguised as a defense, and he had walked directly into it. Open a channel, he ordered. Encrypted to Hegemony Central Command. Priority Alpha. The communication established quickly. War Leader Throckmar, report your situation. Central Command, I require guidance. The tactical situation at Earth has become complicated. The humans possess capabilities far exceeding intelligence estimates. Council support is substantial and shows no signs of wavering. Recommend we consider alternative strategies. There was a long pause. Throckmar knew what was happening. The central strategists were running the same calculations he had, coming to the same conclusions. Victory here was possible, but at a cost that would endanger the hegemony's broader strategic position. Finally, the response came. War Leader, you are authorized to open negotiations with the humans and Council representatives. Objective: establish a face-saving resolution that preserves hegemony honor while avoiding catastrophic casualties. The initial attack on Earth is to be reframed as a security assessment of a potential threat species. You will demand security guarantees and territorial agreements, but you are authorized to accept human sovereignty in exchange for non-aggression commitments. It was as close to an admission of defeat as the Vraxian hegemony would ever make. Throckmar felt both relief and shame-relief that he wouldn't have to order his warriors into a meat grinder. Shame that he would be remembered as the war leader who backed down from primitives. Understood, Central Command. Initiating diplomatic protocols. In Earth Defense Command, Admiral Chen received the incoming communication with carefully controlled satisfaction. A Rexian war leader requesting formal negotiations. He wants to discuss mutual security arrangements and clarification of territorial boundaries. Translation: they're looking for a way to retreat without admitting they're retreating, Vexnar said. Then we give them one, Chen replied. We didn't enter this fight to humiliate them. We just wanted to survive. If they're willing to leave us alone, we can be gracious in victory. She opened the diplomatic channel. War Leader Throckmar, this is Admiral Chen. We are prepared to discuss reasonable security arrangements. Perhaps we can find terms acceptable to both our peoples. The negotiations took 3 days. In the end, the agreement was surprisingly straightforward. The Vraxian hegemony would formally recognize human sovereignty over the Sol system and a buffer zone extending 30 light-years in all directions. Humanity would commit to non-expansion beyond that zone for 50 years and would share certain defensive technologies with the hegemony, nothing that would endanger human security, but enough to give the Vraxians something to show their own people. Most importantly, Both sides agreed to establish formal diplomatic relations and conflict resolution mechanisms. It wasn't friendship, but it was better than war. As the Vraxian armada prepared to depart, Throckmar sent one final personal message to Admiral Chen. "You fought well, human. We underestimated your species. That will not happen again. But I tell you this, you have made a powerful enemy reconsider their assumptions. That is no small achievement. Perhaps there is honor in you after all." Chen smiled as she read the message. "That's as close to a compliment as Vraxians get, I'm told." "It's also a warning," Vexnar observed. "He's saying they'll be watching humanity carefully from now on." "Good," Chen replied. "Let them watch. Let them see us building, growing, contributing to galactic civilization. Maybe someday they'll realize that cooperation beats conquest." "You really believe that?" "I have to," Chen said simply. "Because the alternative is spending the rest of human history preparing for the next war. And we've done enough of that already." 6 months after the battle for Earth, the Galactic Council convened in an expanded chamber because humanity now occupied one of the 48 member seats. Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez, Earth's first permanent council representative, stood to address the assembly. "Members of the council, I come before you with gratitude and with proposals. Humanity is grateful for your support during our recent crisis. Without your courage, particularly that of Commander Vexnar, and the warriors who stood with us, we might have faced a very different outcome. We will not forget that debt. But gratitude alone does not build the future," he continued. "Humanity wishes to contribute to Council security and prosperity. To that end, we propose the establishment of joint research facilities, shared defense platforms, and technology exchange programs. We have much to learn from you, and perhaps something to teach as well." Over the following years, humanity proved to be everything the Council had hoped for and feared. They were disruptive, yes, constantly questioning established procedures, proposing radical solutions, pushing boundaries that other species considered fixed. But they were also tireless allies, contributing ships to Council defense fleets, sharing their innovations, and bringing an energy that had been missing from galactic affairs. The Vraxian hegemony, chastened by their near disaster at Earth, began a slow transformation. They didn't abandon their military strength, but they started exploring diplomatic alternatives to conquest. It would take generations for them to fully change, but the process had begun. And Earth continued to build, to grow, to reach ever further into the stars. But they never forgot the lessons of their near extinction. Every human child learned about the day the Vraxians came, the day the Council stood with them, the day humanity proved they belonged among the stars. In Council archives, historians debated the significance of humanity's admission. Some called it the beginning of a new era of galactic cooperation. Others warned it was merely a pause before greater conflicts. But all agreed on one thing. The galaxy had changed the day the Council chose to watch and then chose to stand as humanity fought for their survival. And in the depths of space, on hundreds of worlds, beings of countless species looked up at the stars and wondered what other surprises the universe might hold. Because if humans, those strange, violent, brilliant, terrifying humans, could go from primitive warmongers to respected Council members in less than a millennium, what else might be possible? The answer, as humanity liked to say, was written in the stars, and they were all just beginning to read it.